you really dig into it, there aren't many careers that have more complexities than being a police officer. There are so many little things, but things like that. Y'all like edit this thing? Like you take pieces, or is this just like one?
We shoot it. We just go. Josh.
I'm like, go back here on the office. Get the bleep.
Well, welcome back at Chief.Cap.Chap show. Today we got a special guest, Sheriff Joey Higgerson, and Jason is bowing out this time around. So just want to say appreciate you guys following us. If you want to send us an email, send it at chief.cap.chap@gmail.com. We probably need to put that on the screen. Josh, can you put that on the screen for us so everybody can see that? Josh does a good job for us. He does a lot of work. He's probably your Brandon.
Yeah. You got to have those people that know what they're doing. You don't know what you're doing.
He's a MacGyver for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you don't know Sheriff Higgerson, he just took office January 1st, and I asked him to come up today to talk about his first 6 months in as Sheriff of New Madrid County, which is where I went to high school. One of the best counties around.
It's a good county.
Yeah, it's where I was raised. So I'm excited about this. Joe used to work here, but I'm going to let you tell your story. And I got some questions I want to ask you that I've written down here, so this is going to be good.
So let's go with it. Start from the beginning.
Yeah. No, not yet. No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't care. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, getting in law enforcement and everything.
Well, so I'm like you. I'm from New Madrid County. I grew up in Kewanee, and I started here when I was 21. And it's kind of weird because, and I see it a lot in the guys that work for me, is a lot of those guys, their dads were cops, or they've got somebody in their family that was a police officer or deputy. I don't have any frame of reference for any of that. I didn't know anything about it. I went to college at SEMO for a little over a year and just decided I didn't like that. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And literally it's, where, and I tell this story a lot because it's so different from the way it is now. But I saw, when they still had classified ads, I saw they were running an ad for the police academy in the Standard Democrat. And I just, lo and behold, I said, I think that's something I'd like to do. So I go to the police academy. And at that time, I remember in my academy class at Cape, there was, 30 people in there. Only 3 or 4 had jobs.
Yeah, not sponsored by anybody. You just went on your own.
Yeah, it didn't really work that way. The job market was so much tighter. And so I went, and just on the thought that I'm going to have to find a job when I get out of here. And really, Sykeston was one place I focused on because it was the biggest town around. It's somewhere I knew there was a lot going on, and I wanted opportunity and things like that. So I graduated within about a month, and I was going through Sykeston's process. I got hired with several other guys, and I started in June of 2004 is when I started. And actually, Cliff Jackson was my FTO. John Broom was on that squad when I started. And it was a really overwhelming thing for me because, like I said, I'd never ridden in a police car, and I'd never. Of course, I've been hunting all my life. I'd never shot a handgun until I went to the police academy, And so, and in a way, I think a lot of that was a good thing that kind of starting fresh. But I started here and was here for a little over 3 years. Had some really good experience, and I tell people all the time, I mean, this is one of the best departments around, and I think a lot of those things that I learned in the beginning really set a base for how I operate now, and I think everywhere at that time, 20 years ago, is more, maybe it was more formal, you know what I mean? We're almost forced now to be more laxed on some things with I don't say discipline necessarily, but just we're more open to new ideas. It was more rigid. It was rigid,
and I would almost say borderline strict.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. And that's a good thing, especially you got 21, 22-year-old kids, because that's what they are. They're just kids, And so I think that was a really, really good thing. After that time, I'd had some medical problems and things like that, and I was still young, and my wife and our son was born about that time, so I got out of law enforcement just for a very short time, about 6 months. Yeah. And I remember telling my wife then, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm meant to do one thing, and that's what I'm going to do. So I kind of eased my way back in and started doing some other stuff. I worked for the juvenile office for a little while in New Madrid County. And then
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I was there for about 5 years.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So I was there for 5 years. I worked shortly after Sandy Hook. There was a big push in SRO stuff. I went to work for the school district there for about a year. And at that point, I kind of got involved with the city of New Madrid. The city of New Madrid is, especially in southeast Missouri, there's a strange thing. And I know in New Madrid, Portageville, up until recently in Malden, in Steele, in Crothersville, they have elected police chiefs, and we don't see it that way, but it's very strange anywhere. They just don't do that anywhere else.
Right.
There may be other places in the country, but in the state of Missouri, that's about it,
It's pretty odd.
Yeah. It is.
Now, who was the police chief before you?
Claude McFerrin was the chief before I was,
Yeah.
and he retired. They lost some people. They were really in a bad state, and they were hiring for an assistant police chief just outside, but they wanted somebody that was planning on running the next time. And I talked to my wife about it. I said, I'm gonna give it a shot. And I interviewed, and I got the job. I went to work there in August of 13, and in April of 14, I ran in the election, and I went for 3 terms there, 3 4-year terms, luckily unopposed.
Yeah.
And it really was a good thing. And we built.
How many years did you say?
I was there from 13 till January of 25. So about 12 years. But I thought we had, for a town that size, we had one of the better municipal departments around, and it took a decade to build that.
Yeah, I hate to do this because you don't need your ego built by any means, but I do remember that department really shined after you were there. I mean, you changed a lot of stuff there. I know, of course, I know a lot of people. I got family in New Madrid, and initially they were like, who is this Joey guy? What's he about? And I said, well, he's a good guy. He's going to do a good job. And of course, they come back later and said, man, it's night and day. How it was for the city police department. So I know we've worked together quite a bit and share information and things like that, which I think was very good when you were chief. We still do that, but. But you were on my squad at one point. I don't remember.
Don't make me tell that story. I know that's what you're leading into.
Here we go.
Well, you was talking about being strict. I mean, we had a captain, great guy. I mean, and man, you were in that. Because if you broke a stapler, you might be writing a memo because it's public property, tax dollars. They want to know what happened to it, which is reasonable because you got, like you said, 21, 22-year-old guys. And sometimes things get broken or people bump a car into something, and then nobody owns up to it. So they liked at the time anything. They wanted a memorandum about what took place.
Well, John's going to remember, in the old station, and you go in the squad room, there's 3 chairs, 3 computers. Everybody uses the same computers. And, of course, at that time, it was different, and you had to – it got to the point we got 3 office chairs, 3 new office chairs for this. And I come in, and, of course – and I'll just say, when I was on the road, I worked hard,
Yeah.
And I'm out doing things, and I get back to the office. I'm gonna sit down and do some reports. He's standing there, sees me sit down in one of these chairs, and it kind of makes a little pop, And the back is messed up. I'm like, man, did you see that? This chair just broke. And he's standing there. He said, yeah, you're gonna need to do a memo on that. And I kind of laughed, and I'm like,
he's like, are you kidding me?
I'm like, no. Yeah, he's like, no, seriously. And I did not like that. And of course we talked.
It's hard to believe, but he did voice his displeasure about that.
And so, we talked. I told him, and we were at a deal in Jeff City here a few months ago. It was an economic development actually, and there was different people from the area there, and we're all sitting around and talking, and we're just talking about things in general. And one of the things, of course, Jim had went from detective division to a sergeant on the road, and I was on the road. We were working midnight shift, and it's the only reprimand I've ever had in my whole career. And I arrested a guy one night, and I forgot to put his name. If you remember, we used to put their property in the filing cabinet in a Ziploc bag. I forgot to put his name on a Ziploc bag. And so I get a call, and there might have been some inter-squad rivalry,
Always.
The next squad comes on that day. I get a call from the lieutenant. Of course, I'm on midnights. It's 10 o'clock. I wake up out of a dead sleep. He said, we found so-and-so's property here. It doesn't have his name on it. Did you arrest him? Yes, sir, I believe so. Sorry, I must have forgot to put a tag on it. Okay, no big deal. I come to work that night, and he calls me in the office. We're going to have a talk. I'm going to have to give you a sergeant's counseling on this. And of course, like I said,
I guess I was more strict back then too. Maybe
that was his first. probably getting some pressure from outside. You
I'm
know,
sure I
like,
was.
We need some action here.
Yeah.
And so that was probably his first reprimand he'd ever delivered, the first one I ever got, and I went ballistic.
Yeah.
You know, like you're telling me that, and he said, you know, of course, like you tell everybody, you got a right to appeal it, blah, blah. And I'm beating on the desk. Well, I'm going to appeal it, and they're not going to. Finally, he's like, could you just stop and let's just get through this terrible process and walk out? And so that's the way it played out. There was probably some good words of wisdom on his part, but that was my first and only reprimand for not putting a label.
Yeah,
on that.
back then, I mean, and like you said, pressure up, up the chain and everything. Little things like that seemed to be bigger things back then, you know. So,
do you remember when we, of course, talking about how different it was and how strict we were? We had a specific date to go to long sleeves and short sleeves.
Oh yeah.
So it was
April 15th.
April 15th, you could start wearing short sleeves, but when you had long sleeves on, you always had to wear a necktie.
Yep.
And do you remember when they said, okay, you don't have to necessarily wear a necktie with the long sleeves, but we'll let you wear like a turtleneck.
Turtleneck, yep.
We thought we had just been given
You're like,
the greatest reward, And so, of course, facial hair too. You didn't. That was,
no.
So those are kind of some of the differences back then too.
And it's funny too, because just like that example of putting a label on a bag, as small as that is, on the flip side, those little things like that are the things that really make you sharp.
Yeah.
And just like you, and that's why I knew that April 15th, because I still use that with my guys. So some of that I carried over, Well,
you think about, if one person's doing that and we have, 25 people in patrol division, you got half a dozen of them doing that. That's a lot of dysfunctional time. And it can be a big problem.
Well, it's just, if anything, and everybody, especially law enforcement leaders, I think over time, they come to the things to them that are of highest priority. And for me, one of the highest priorities is just discipline, and that we've all got a set of rules to follow, and we're all going to do it, and that really, really goes a long way with the public. I mean, that's what they want. In reality, the public doesn't want, and I know I'm getting off to the side here. But the public doesn't want sloppy, unprofessional police officers.
Right.
They want guys men and women that dress appropriately, that talk to people appropriately, and that's just, those little things they all add up, and they're so important.
For sure.
Let me ask you this question. So, 12, 13 years as police chief in New Madrid. When was it, and why did you decide, hey, I'm gonna shoot for the sheriff's position?
I had those guys that are in the office, just like Terry Stevens. He was there for 3 or 4 terms, and I told him then that, if, of course, I'm like you, I'm from there, got a ton of family down there, and I went to school. I know a lot of people, and people they'll come to you all the time and tell you that, hey, why don't you run for sheriff? Why don't you run for sheriff? A lot of them don't mean it. They're just trying to, it's conversation or whatever else. But I, like Terry Stevens, I've got enough respect for Terry. I told him, it's like, as long as you're going to run, I'm not going to run. I feel like I hadn't paid my dues at that time. It just wasn't my time. Bud Cooper was the sheriff before, and he and I had a lot of talks, So you've got to really, for me, it came down to the point of, am I ready for that in my career? And is it, I hate to say, a lot of it is, I'm ready to do things my way. And Sykes and DPS is different in that they are a standalone entity. There are municipal police departments in New Madrid County, and they're standalone entities. But, and this is what I told somebody else, I said the sheriff really sets the tone for how we're going to conduct law enforcement business in New Madrid County. It's always been that way, as long as I've been around. And so it came down to the point of, I want to do it my way. I feel like I trust my judgment. I think the public trusts my judgment and how we're going to operate. And I think other police officers trust my judgment. And that's what it really got to that point, as do I think, is this what's best for me? And on top of that, is this what's best for the county? So and when I tell you that, I can't tell you how many hours went into the thought of that. And part of that is my own personality and of course my wife, we've been married for 20 years now, and if I talk to anybody, I'm going to talk to her. She knows me better than I know myself, but I talk to her about it a lot. And part of that was when I know my own personality. So once I come out there and say I'm going to run for this office, almost a personality that's obsessive, that because I knew when I opened that door that that was it. That was my life for the next year.
You're either going to do it or you're not.
That's it.
Yeah.
There is no in between.
Right.
There is no compromise. There is no. So I was very hesitant almost to that point, because I knew then, and it consumed not only my life, my whole family for a year. And and that's something I'll always owe them. My wife and my kids, they gave their life for a year.
So that campaign was a pretty hard road.
Brutal.
Yeah.
But if
it's hard coming in, because you're going up against the incumbent and all that stuff, which I guess Buddy had was retiring, but you're still running against somebody that was in the office at the time, and you got to come in strong or you're not going to get it.
That's right. And it's a really strange situation, and for me it's a little at least a little easier in that I had been an elected police chief for years. Now granted, I hadn't been in any campaigns because I'd been unopposed, but you've got the mindset of that you're trying to balance.
Yeah.
These people are going to have to vote for me in 4 years.
Well, you had a foundation where people could actually look at and say, this is what we would get with this guy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But a political campaign like that, and this is the way I thought of it. And a lot of people, when I started campaigning, they're like, man, you're starting really early. But the problem is, if you really think about it, if you're going to hit every community event, and we're coming up on that now, if you're going to hit every community event, you've got to consider what is not going to roll back around by the time the election gets here.
Right. Yeah.
In New Madrid
Because
County,
you have like neighbor days and city picnics.
In New Madrid County, that's Cotton Carnival Parade.
Yeah.
The Cotton Carnival Parade will not roll back around by the time the election gets here in the first week of August. So if you want to hit every single event, you're going to have to start a year ahead of time. And that's what we did, So it's unbelievable how much pressure you put on yourself and how many hours. I would hate to know how many hours we actually put into that.
I would think, you spend so much time at the city police department and building that up like you did, that it had to be pretty difficult to walk away from that and go run for this office. So.
We were on that major case squad call out in Portageville a few weeks ago, and I was sitting, I think it was with Josh, actually. We were sitting there and we needed something. We needed some piece of equipment. And I said, yeah, we need a whatever it was. And I looked at Josh. I'm like, I had like 5 of those, and I just gave it up, a year, because at the city we had all this, we had capability, and so we had all that, and we're going to have it. We'll have it at the sheriff's office. It takes
you
time
work
to
toward
build
it.
That's right. You don't come in and just especially, and I criticize other leaders for this, especially law enforcement leaders. Is the idea, and what I always say is just stroke the check, I don't like that. I don't like that idea that we're just, hey, I need it, so write us a check, we need it.
Right.
I just don't operate that way. So we'll come to that point, but you got to start at the bottom.
So what's kind of the major differences? Obviously, it's a bigger area. You're working the whole county, and like you said, you're working with the smaller departments and around various cities and everything. What else is different about that? I mean,
I tell people all the time. Since January, I've really gotten one good line down that I tell people a lot, and I tried to take things that through the campaign that I heard a lot of that I addressed. And one thing I heard is, we want to see more deputies. We want to see them. We want to see them. Want to see them. And New Madrid County in particular, you've had compared to 10 years ago, you've lost several municipal police departments. They just don't exist. And so we're putting a lot of time into those small towns and things like that don't have it. Right. But what I tell a lot of those people, and we've made some good progress to get more visibility from deputies, but one thing we get a lot of, I tell them, is I got 2 or 3 uniformed guys at a time, and they got 700 square miles. And when you think of it that way, just remember, response times, things like that. Of course, we're taking some steps to mitigate some of that. We've set up some substations in the county on the north end and the south end to cut response times, but they've got 700 square miles to cover. That's a lot. And on top of that, and coming from a city to that, is think of how that affects all your equipment. We're putting 30, 40,000 miles a year on a car, a patrol deputy is, versus 5 to 10 that they were putting before in the city. So there's things like that. When it comes to dealing with the police chiefs, like in New Madrid, Portageville, Matthews, the good thing is that's where I came from. So I've got a good understanding of, and just as well as I do, there can be a lot of interagency tension and things like that when you have overlapping jurisdictions. And
I never really thought about the sheriff. I mean, it makes sense now that you say that. I mean, obviously, but of course, sheriff is, we should say, a lot of people, I don't want to assume that people know this, is the highest ranking official, police official in the county, a peace
Right.
officer, whatever
Right.
the correct term is there. But so you go out and you're obviously over the whole county, so you got to somewhat coordinate
Sure.
efforts, and because crime, as we all know, does not stay in one local jurisdiction; it travels. So that makes a lot of sense. Was that very hard to do?
Yeah,
Because
again,
every department, even we have our own way. Like Minor may have their own way, Cape has their own way,
Sure.
but you got to go in there and say, hey, and you got to work with them and coordinate.
yeah, and
that,
it's always, you can't get anything done in this business without getting along with people.
Right.
You got to be able to get along.
So how do you do it?
That's a good question. Well, if it were only that simple, a lot of it is, again, I can sympathize with municipal police chiefs because that's where I came from.
Right.
And I know the things that, for lack of a better word, things that set them off. I know things that they don't like.
Yeah.
And I work very hard to avoid that or mitigate it.
Right.
And just like that, and I've had people say that before. Well, isn't the sheriff the chief law enforcement officer of the county? Can't you go in and tell them this and tell them that? I don't do that. I don't operate that way.
Departments are very territorial, I think.
Very, very.
Because you spend a lot of time trying to, take care of your community, and another department's coming in. You're kind of like, I got this.
And I was that way.
Yeah.
But there is some good reasoning behind that. The fact that the people in this city, I
Right.
have to answer to them. And if
Yeah.
you go in and make decisions and you do things, then I'm
Yeah.
going to pay for it.
Yeah, if you go in and that department or agency operates differently and maybe even upsetting some citizens, you're probably going to hear about that.
That's right.
as a police chief.
That's right.
So yeah.
You're right there. You're with those people every
Yeah.
day. You got a lot better idea of what's going on in a community like that. They're going to take the heat for that, and so that's why, especially and that major case squad call out I referred to in Portersville is a perfect example. Freddie Hill's the police chief down there. If there was any critical decision to make, I wouldn't make any decision without talking to him.
Yeah, Freddie's a good
in
guy.
matter like
He's
that.
been around a long time.
Long time, and so you need to listen to what those people have to say.
Yeah.
And empower them to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same. If there was something, of course, a good piece of Sikeston and more of Sikeston every day is into New Madrid County.
Yeah.
We would never, ever think of doing something inside the city of Sikeston that's in New Madrid County without Sikeston DPS knowing about it.
Yeah.
It's just that's common courtesy, and in this business, that's the way it works. And that keeps everything moving smooth, keeps everybody getting along, and that's just the way you've got to do it.
Yeah, those major case squads. I guess as from a sheriff's perspective is probably. We have city, and I know when we have a major case squad, that's a big responsibility. Now you got the whole county, and so you got to worry about that. I know that's stressful. That's a good program that they started. I don't remember when it was, like 2003 or something like that. Maybe even before that. But before that, we didn't have that, and I've been here long enough to know what it was like without the major case squad. So that's a very beneficial program. What do you think is you did a lot of planning and preparation to go into this. Now you've been into this 6 months. What weren't you prepared for? Is there anything that just was a little more difficult or than you thought?
I've had that question several times, and what I get a lot of times from people is they'll ask, number one, how do you like it? Or is it more than you expected? Is it, number one is I love it. I like getting up and going to work every day because I really, really enjoy my job. And I'll be honest with you, I've just been around in New Madrid County for so long. There wasn't a whole lot that caught me off guard. The one thing that really caught me off guard is how much financial accounting and things are going on in the background, because the sheriff's department is responsible for civil service, serving civil process, and of course all the bonds and everything that are coming in. It's just so much more than on a city level. You're handling the other fees that are being assessed through the court, and my office manager is she was off for the first month or two when I came into office. She was out on maternity leave, and thank the Lord when she came back, because we had a mess. Because there's just so much of that, and every month you've got to give a final accounting. You've got to document where everything's gone. So I really took for granted how much was going on in the background from a financial standpoint, how much money is actually coming through there. It's going right back into the county's general fund, but it's just money that you had to really account for. And it surprised me how much there was on the civil side, and how much prisoner transport and how many we're taking to DOC, we're picking up from DOC.
You're transporting all the time. I hear it on the radio.
I've got 2 guys that full time. That's what they do. Yeah. They transport. And
you have to.
Yeah.
You know? I guess you're sending people all over the state.
Yeah, and in reality, a sheriff, from a statutory standpoint, that's their most important duty. You know, law enforcement function is really kind of down on the list. It's more so care of all the prisoners that the county takes in and keeping the courts running and things like that. So that is a huge, and they're going all over the country, you know, picking up prisoners, and so that's a huge responsibility.
So I guess we're 7 months in. If you're going to describe your first 6 months in office, what would you say?
Well, what I tell people all the time, because you know, the opening line, you meet somebody and, well, how's it going? And I always tell them we're busy but productive, and we are busy. We're very, very busy. We are very, very productive. And it doesn't matter if it's police chief, but especially a sheriff, just based on the way elections work and things like that. When they come in, they want to set things their own way, you know. And when you come in, you've really got to prioritize what's the most important.
Not to cut you off, but I remember starting here new as chief, and you have your idea of what you want to do, and it may not be how it was done in the past, and that can unsettle some people. Even because they're wondering, like, is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? Are things going to change? And cops hate change. They they absolutely despise change.
Do not like it. Yeah, and just for us, it came down to things of especially, and sheriffs are notorious for coming in and they want to change everything, you know. And I, especially from my perspective, because, you and I have had this conversation before. A sheriff is unique, especially again because of the political angle, but also they really need to establish your own, for lack of a better word, to use some more modern verbiage. You have to have your own branding. You have to have your own personality. You have to have, and that's what you got to have. That when people see this uniform, this vehicle, striping, they know exactly who it's attached to. And for a sheriff, that is very, very, very important. So when I came in, and again, I go back to discipline and things. I wanted everybody in polyester uniforms, and so we got everybody in uniform. I changed vehicle striping just to something new to kind of make everything more fresh. So we started that right off the bat. But two, obviously you have things, policy review, and so we're in the process of a whole new policy manual, and of course you know how terrible that process is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just because we review our policies ever so often, and that's a big. There's a lot of policies.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Because things change, laws change.
Sure.
You know, I mean, things come down from the state or federal government or whatever, and you got to adjust.
You got to stay current.
Yeah.
And so you know those things are highest priority, and we got to get. Again, it goes back to the statutory requirements of be sure, number one, that we're getting prisoners where they need to be, number two, keeping the courts running, and number three, law enforcement action. And so that obviously all of our people are equipped, they've got everything they need, and so that's been a process, but we're getting to where we need to be there. People have the tools they need to do the job.
Yeah.
So, and we've got to, it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same way here. It doesn't end ever.
Yeah, it doesn't, you know, and I know we've had this conversation too, because I think some people think you come in as chief or sheriff and you're sitting on the high ground and everything's going to go you. That's really, if you're going to be effective and be good, you have to serve those who are serving the public. And it's like you said, get them the equipment they need, get them, you know, all the pay they need and all these things so you can maintain staff and keep things going like you want it to go. So you do a lot of work behind the scenes just trying to prop up your guys and gals doing the job.
Yeah, if those people that work for you actually knew what all was going on behind the scenes, just to, because you know how it is, you know, they'll come in, I'll have somebody come in, you know, my brakes are squeaking when I'm like, okay, just, you know, get a hold of, you know, take it to such and such shop, get the brakes fixed, come in a week later. Boy, those brakes are still squeaking. Like, well, could you take care of that? Could you just get it to the shop instead of me? I'm not going to get in your car and drive it out there. So, but you know how they just they're looking at it right there in front of their face, and we're trying to look at it at 30,000 feet. And
I know when I first come in, I told our command staff, I said, listen, and we had this conversation. I said, those people that are serving, and of course we have fire division and patrol division, that officer level is the most important job here. I said, this is how you know that. If they weren't doing that job, we'd be doing it. And that's so and we got to keep them going.
The public is the same way. And the public, what they see are those people, men and women out there in uniform every day. And I said this when I was campaigning. I said, when I came into office, probably 2 or 3 days before, because literally when you win the sheriff's race and you take over midnight on January 1st, it's yours. And so a couple days before that, I met with all the deputies, and one of the things I said to them is, we are all here in support of patrol. They are the base of everything that goes on in a police organization. Investigators, command staff, office staff, we are here in support of patrol. So you need to get your mind around that's how we're going. We are a patrol centric department that we operate. I mean, they're carrying the load, and you've got to give them everything they need to do the job. You've got to support them. You've got to correct them when they're wrong. That's the backbone of your department from a law enforcement standpoint, is your uniform patrol.
Yeah. And, the discipline and correcting people, I think sometimes officers get, they don't really understand that. Of course, they hate criticism, you know what I mean? I won't say always, but there was a point in my supervision career where I understood that I have got to discipline this officer for his own good, because if I don't, as my dad would say, that cow's going to stray too far away from the herd, and you might just need to let him go so you can stay with the rest of them. So
well, and again, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about this, but we've got a problem in law enforcement now, and a lot of it is getting too relaxed. It's getting too. We're letting go of those things that really made good, sharp officers and strong departments. And
I think a lot of that is that the turnover that we've had, and you have young supervisors that are trying to learn how important that is, and it took me a little bit to learn how important.
That's right, and we into the hiring situation. It's so hard to get people. We talk about this all the time, that we do things that 10 years ago we probably wouldn't have done. We let things go that 10 years ago we probably wouldn't have let go because we're really hurting for people,
right?
And you start asking yourself, I mean, do I really need to say something to this guy about his facial hair?
Right.
And so things that, again, 10, 15 years ago wouldn't really even been a conversation, but now we're letting go. But and I have that talk with other sheriffs and police chiefs and things all the time of the worst thing we can do for our people is relax the standard to a level. Like I said, when it comes to complete disarray of uniforms, of vehicles, and one thing I've always been big on is not letting the tail wag the dog. You can't you got to listen to your people, but in the end, they're not making decisions. You are, and you make the decisions, and they carry it out. That's all. Or you've heard me say this before. I'm going to call the tune, and you're all going to dance, and that's the way it's going to be. And so you've got to do that. If you let these officers are just like, and again, a lot of them are 21, 22-year-old kids. Do you let them come to your house and make your decisions, your financial decisions, everything else? Why would you let them make the decisions for a department? They don't decide what's going on. You know what's best, and because ultimately it's your responsibility. It's going to fall back on you. If it goes bad, it's on you. And I tell my people that all the time, that you can go out there and like I said, at least in your personal life, sometimes you make yourself look stupid. You're not going to make me look stupid. I take a lot of pains to not let that happen.
Well, your reputation is everything. It's not just Joey's reputation. I mean, because it's like you said, that department represents you. And they represent the county, and the, so you won that election pretty handedly. I mean, so
76%.
Man, that was pretty impressive. I know it's not just the fish fries, which were pretty good. They were pretty good. But how do you building trust in the community, or in your case, the county? How do you do that? I mean, I know you're from there, and a lot of people knew you, but
well, I'm going to tell you a big part of that is exactly what you just said. Is a matter of your reputation is everything. And I didn't wake up 2 years ago and think to myself, well, I'm going to run for sheriff, so I'm going to start watching what I say and what I do now. I've been doing that for 40 years now. You know what I mean? But that was just the way I was raised. This is how you're going to you're going to treat people, and this is how you're going to talk to people. And I've had I use this all the time. I had a guy working for me one time, and there was something to do with hey, people don't need to see you. You need to wash your car. You need to do something else. And he said, I don't really care what people think about me. And I said, "Boy, you're in the wrong business." And
you get judged every day.
Every day. Yeah. And that's the way. And I live my life like that. So when I got ready to run, I didn't have any concerns about, were there things in my personal life that because they do. When you're in a political campaign, things in your personal life are going to come up. Not that I've never done wrong in my life. I'm a human being, but there was never anything that I was worried. Boy, I hope this didn't come up or that. But and I had a lot of people tell me that I didn't know. Of course, I met hundreds, if not thousands, of people through the course of that campaign. But several of them, we talked to so and so, and he knows you real well, and he just talks so highly. But I think your reputation definitely precedes you, and if you're going to go into a political campaign and you haven't spent the majority of your life already preparing for something like that, you're behind. So I think that really helped a lot. That I just, again, far from perfect, but I try to really watch what I say and watch what I do, and because you're always, especially in this business, you're always under a microscope. So,
which got to be pretty hard for you because you're a direct person.
I am.
Kind of what you see is what you get,
right?
And sometimes you have a tendency to say, and this is not a bad thing, but you say what's on your mind.
That's right.
And a lot of people don't like hearing that.
No, and that's a double-edged sword. And in some ways it can be bad, in some ways it can be good. And I will say, from a standpoint dealing with people that I don't know already, I think that was very beneficial to me in a political campaign, just from a reputation standpoint. And
you mentioned political campaign, and we all know politics, and you get politician type people, and of course you're an elected official. Sometimes people just tell people what they want to hear. You're not one of those guys,
no.
And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they want to know the truth,
well,
even if it stings a little.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, that line about hey, we want to see more deputies, and I tell them, like, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's going to be a deputy drive by your house every 30 minutes. 700 square miles out here for them to cover. We're going to do everything, and just like that, putting substations in places to reduce response times and things. There's things we can do in the background to fix those problems, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I got the silver bullet and everything's going to be better. It does not work that way. Yeah. And there was a lot of talk coming in through the campaign about budgets. The budget had been cut, and how do you expect that you're going to do this? The budget's has been cut. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to come in here and tell you I've got the answer to every problem. I said, but some of the things I did when I came in is I reduced office staff and then used that money because, again, we're working in support of patrol. I put that money into patrol. I cut a lot of things that I didn't feel was necessary, moved that money around. But on top of that, this is just how it is, I put in a lot of hours myself. A lot of hours, and I go to calls. I go to as much as you can. Yeah. And
I hear you on the radio all the time going to calls.
Yeah, I go to calls a lot, and I think there's a lot of benefit to that. The public likes to see that. Your people that work for you like to see that. And two, I told somebody the other day, I said, I feel like while I'm still young enough. And because I see sheriffs and police chiefs, they're old guys and or men and women, and they're physically, they just can't do it anymore. Yeah. It's just part of it. I said, well, I'm still able to do it, and I feel like
I think it keeps you sharp. It's when you're not doing that enough, it's easy to kind of get away from the fundamentals and then seeing what the officers are experiencing and stuff like that.
Well, you've always got to be. And I'm one of those guys, I hate going to training. Like, I hate it. I'd just rather be at work, but I do it. But that's part of, you have always, as a police officer, even, it doesn't matter if you're a sheriff or police chief or you're just a uniformed patrolman, you have always got to be developing. You've always got to be getting better. You've always got to be working and you don't even consciously have to do that. If you get yourself in a frame of mind that and I tell this all the time, is there are moments in your career where you're going to see things and realize, maybe I need to make a change here. And I'll give you such a perfect example. I told him this the other day, and I said, man, I hate to compliment this guy. I've told you before, I hate to compliment somebody to their face, I much prefer otherwise. But anyway, I told this story with him sitting there because it is right, and I think young police officers and things, they need to hear that. As I was working here on the road, and man, I am just going 90 miles an hour. I'm arresting the bad guys. I'm putting them in jail, just thinking I'm setting the world on fire.
Yeah.
And if you remember when Bobby Sullivan first came back here, and Bobby was working on the road, and he had stopped a guy. We were working night shift. He stops a guy. The guy, it was some minimal, drive motorboat, something like that. We were at the old station. I was downstairs, and he comes in with a guy. Well, next thing you know, they're going up the stairs, and I thought, where's he going? So they go upstairs. They're up there for a while. I went out and I come back and I see the guy leaving. And I'm like, where's he going? He's supposed to be in jail. I thought something's kind of weird here, So I'm gonna get to the bottom. So I go to so what do you think you're doing anyway? And but I go back and I read the reports later on. Well, he had stopped the guy. The guy had some drug paraphernalia or something. Well, he gave information about a murder that had happened, a couple decades before, about possibly where a vehicle that was at that was involved in the murder. And at that time, I thought to myself, I felt stupid for one, but two, that I realized this guy is thinking on a level about 3 or 4 times higher than I am. I'm out here beating my head against the wall, and I'm thinking on a very basic level that I really need to. And so when that happened, that really opened my eyes to there's a lot more to this. And I tell people that a lot. There's not, if you really dig into it, there aren't many careers that have more complexities than being a police officer. There are so many little things, but things like that. Those are things that you're going to have to go through in your career to keep developing, to keep getting better. And if you're not going, if I'm sitting in my office signing bills and paperwork all day, I don't know what's going on out there, and I'm not going to get any better. And being stagnant is about one of the worst things you can be. You cannot be stagnant.
So how many deputies do you have right now?
So I've got 8 deputies on the road that are full-time answering calls. Right now I've got 2 investigators, and I've got a couple guys that they're deputies, but they either work in the court or they do transport. So basically on the road I've got 8 deputies to handle, and so we've got 2 deputies on 90% of the day. Sometimes we got three on at our busiest times to do some overlapping day, evening, midnight shift, and then myself and other command staff people, we're out all the time answering calls, filling gaps. But I think a big part of that is getting your people to do what you do, and those guys, the lieutenant that handles everything over the criminal division, our 911 director, Brandon Hanner, Brandon well. Right. He's been on a lot of stuff. He's a deputy there. He spends a lot of his time doing 911 stuff. When he's not doing that,
That's a big job.
He'll go out. Yeah, he'll go out, take some calls. So we're all driving at the same target, and there's never got to be a time of, well, why am I doing this? This is for so and so to do, or this is. Yeah. There's not any of that. We just try not to have any attitudes like that.
So. It's 700 square miles. That's a big area. I think about this. My dad has a farm down south of Marston, and that's a pretty good drive.
You know how long it takes to drive from Morehouse to Gideon? You think about that. That's a long way.
That's about where my dad's farm is.
Yeah, that's an hour drive. Yeah, from Morehouse to Gideon.
Yeah, Dad's farm's right across the ditch from Gideon over there.
So that's a long way. And there are even if you go from basically out here. Yeah, Larcell Drive or Lenuel out here at AA. Yeah, that's the New Madrid County line.
Well, people probably think, well, there's nothing out there. Why does he need that? And the fact of the matter is, people know we have a lot of cops here in town, and we put a lot of pressure here. And so what happens is you'll see parties and things blow up in rural areas, and oftentimes you'll have shootings and things like that. And you got 8 deputies or something like that, and you're trying to manage a party that may have 200 people there. That's not enough people. That's
you think about that. That's 8 deputies for 24 hours a day,
right?
7 days a week. Yeah. In reality, you don't have access to that.
Even if you do the best flexing you can, you might get 4 or 5 out there.
Sure. And that's you and I've had that conversation before, that a big part of police work is just moving them around. Yeah. Moving the criminals around. Right. And that's what I've said that in the city of Madrid.
It's not just criminals, but when people gather, anybody gathers, you're going to have problems. Sure. That's just, I don't care if it's, we got the rodeo coming up, and years ago we used to have problems out there, and we started putting more officers out there, and now it's a great time for family members to come but we still keep cops out there because people still gather.
Well, I've said this a lot before, and I tell my people this a lot, and when I went back to work at the city, at some point I went back to school and I got my bachelor's degree, just a piece of paper. But I do remember a little bit. And from a criminology class, I remember one thing, it was so important. And I said, you need to think about it this way. And I told tell the public this a lot. There is one factor, and it's scientifically proven, that is the biggest deterrent of crime is in a criminal's brain. What are the odds that I'm going to get caught? It's not what the punishment is. It's not none of that. It's what are the odds that I'm going to get caught? And the perfect solution to that is better police work, increased presence. So you take a place like Sikeston, it just by the nature of that, of a strong police department that's well staffed, that they're being proactive, they're pushing the criminal element away.
Right.
And that's what I've said. I've said that a lot, and I said that about in New Madrid County is I really don't care where the criminals go.
Yeah.
As long as it's not here. That's the unfortunate reality.
I had a meeting this week, and somebody was talking about how criminals were leaving Sikeston and going to another city, and I said, it's kind of like that old adage about outrunning the bear. You don't have to run faster than the bear. You just got to run faster than your buddy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's not to push, again, the criminal element on someone else, but that's the reality. There's a certain portion of the percentage of the population that is involved in criminal activity, and you just don't want them where you are.
Yeah, and I say that, and it's not. I also want to say this because it's one of the things Southeast Missouri does really well is collaboration and working. We've done street crimes. In the region, we work with you guys. We already mentioned the single major case squad, and that collaboration really improves the safety of the region. I mean, so I don't want to say like we're in competition with each other. I try to do the best job I can here. You do in your county, but we work together a lot. Quite a bit.
Yeah, as I was driving here. Of course, I'm. You know how it is. You're on the phone a big portion of your day. I was on the phone with the Scott County Sheriff, Derek Wheatley, on the way up here about the rodeo, and we're going to use some of our guys to work rodeo detail, and I've said that before too. Is it's so important that if you go somewhere else and that you've had enough background working with some of these people, you can call them by their first name. You see them, it's like, hey, what's that guy? He works at Scott County. You know exactly who it is. They know you.
Yeah.
It makes things work so much better. The people are more comfortable around each other, and there's a free flow of information. Obviously, that's we hear that a lot, that you think somebody's withholding something from you, another police officer or another investigator, that you knock down those barriers. Communication is so, I've said that 100 times too, that communication is these problems that you have with other people, with other leaders. It comes down to either communication breakdown, miscommunication, something.
Right.
It's not that the person you're dealing with is necessarily wrong. They're not bad. They're not. Yeah. You're just not communicating it, or you're not receiving it.
Yeah.
So,
what I like about you is that you spend a lot of time, I know, talking to representatives. Obviously, I know you go to Jeff City, you work with Sheriff Association and everything like that, and you talk about the problems that we all have here. And I think that's, I could probably be better about that. I do that some, but that's so needed, because you're advocating for this whole region when you do that.
Yeah, that's you've really got to. It's what I said earlier about looking at 30,000 feet of how is this all affecting us.
Yeah.
And our reps and senators that are going to Jeff City, they're there to speak for us.
Yeah.
And we can't expect them.
And we got some good reps around here.
Very good.
Of course, Donnie Brown I went to high school with, and that guy's sharp and does
Donnie
a great
Brown
job.
and Cameron Parker and Senators Jamie Berger and Jason Bean and
we got David Dolan now.
Yeah, David Dolan up here.
He's got all this, the legal experience and knowledge and stuff. So having him in there is great too. So Jamie Berger, which you mentioned,
Donnie Brown was the mayor when I was the police chief in New Madrid. So he obviously, we always have worked really well together, and he's easy to call and say, hey, these are the problems we've got. But we can't expect those people to do for us if we don't tell them what we need. And that's not just law enforcement. That's just from a citizen perspective. Yeah. This is what we need. And I can't overstate how important that is. And the perfect example, and I've talked to a lot of police officers about this. Of course, I'm at that stage in my life where there's some things that are of high priority to me. One of them, I've got an 18-year-old going to college next year, this coming fall, and that it was Senate Bill 71. It's been passed now, but it's Police Officer Recruitment and Retention Act that will pay for a college degree. At least pay the tuition for a college degree for an in-state college in Missouri, a state college, so it would be like Southeast Missouri State, Mizzou, if you've been in for a certain number of years, you've been in more than 10 years, it'll pay for dependents tuition. And I spoke to the governor about it when he was here for Memorial Day. Of course, I got my son played taps at the Memorial Day.
Yeah, he did a good job.
And so
I was wondering if that was recorded.
That was not. It was live. It was
I was like, man, that's so good.
It was like this deal. It's one take.
Yeah.
And so
he's good.
But I said then, I said, and that's what I like about our governor now. He's very down to earth, easy to talk to. I said, this is going to be on your desk.
Yeah.
Whatever you could do, we would really appreciate. He said, don't worry about it. I think it's going to be fine. But we're lucky right now. And I said this, and you talk about being direct. And one of the things I tell other police chiefs and sheriffs right now, we've got a very, very good legislature for law enforcement right now.
We do in this region for sure. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 meetings this week, and those guys are showing up there and participating. And I can pick the phone up and call any one of those guys and talk to them and do, and they're really helpful.
There's been a time, and it may not have been in the recent past, but there's been a time where law enforcement and public safety was not high on the priority list for the Missouri legislature. It just wasn't. It is now, and we just need to be vocal about that. I think that's a good thing.
Iron's hot. Yeah,
that's right.
So tell me this. I know you have. We were talking about the rodeo and events. I mean, you have events that are coming up. One that we're working on is that homicide seminar, which we're excited about, and I think that's going to be a really good program for law enforcement in the region. We used to do that years ago. I think we talked about this some on the podcast, but it may have been 15, 18 years ago since the last time we've done that, but that's really good. Bringing in speakers to talk about that. And the other one is the, what is it, the River Fest?
Music on the Mississippi down
Music
there.
on the Mississippi.
Concert.
Yeah. Talk about those a little bit. So
yeah, the homicide seminar is, and I talked before about those times in your career when you're going to realize, or you're going to kind of get some clarity, And I went to the one in 2005. And I was just a patrolman at that time. But when I went to that training, it was the absolute best training I think I ever went to, because it made you, one thing at least for myself, we have our strengths and weaknesses. For me, I think a strength, I'm a critical thinker. I like to really think about stuff. And the homicide seminar and some of the stuff you're exposed to will really make you think. And I came out of that training thinking, this is the kind of stuff I want to do in my career. Yeah. And it's just like that. And I say that about major case squad call-outs and things. Those are the things when you got in police work, that's what you want to do. Yeah.
And I hate to, I'm gonna use your line here. I hate to give you this compliment, but you called me and was talking about doing that homicide seminar, and I was like, God dang, why didn't I think of that? That's
good. I'm a competitive person, so I like it. If I feel like I got one up on you, I like that.
In this job, if you're going to be good in law enforcement, you have to be proactive. Being reactive in law enforcement means the crime happens, you go out there and you investigate it, and being proactive is you're anticipating and you're trying to educate and prepare those officers for what might happen, and you're trying to evaluate what's going to happen this weekend, what do we need to do, and you guys do a really good job at that, I think.
Well, you've seen it 100 times that a situation comes up and you think to yourself, boy, if we would have just done what we've been talking about, I wish we would have done that. You don't have time when something happens. You don't have time to do it then. You got to prepare. And so like the homicide seminar, those are things we need to be exposing our people to some of the best training. Former Sheriff Bud Cooper, when he was with the Highway Patrol, he was really key in helping getting that started. When they were doing the one here, and really helped bring that good training to the area. And we are, the phrase.
These are nationally known speakers too. I mean, they're people you see on TV. Yes. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good training stuff. That again, I think, and somebody else said this. I don't remember who it was, but it was a good line. That this is training. Normally, you'd have to go to California, New York. You had to go across the country to get, and they're going to be able to get it here.
Yeah, so, and again for the region, so it's great for Southeast Missouri to get officers. We'll get some people from other states that'll come here and travel here just to get that training, because it's really good training.
Sure, and it's very minimal cost. Overall cost is minimal, and it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. So if people are going to sign up, officers that might be watching this, they're going to sign up for that. How do they do that?
So I think there's a flyer floating around out there, and we're probably going to start promoting that quite a bit heavier.
We put it out on our social media, and we're gonna keep hitting that again. So I think the registration ends like, is it the 20th of August or
I think something like that. And on the flyer, there's a QR code, takes you right to the website. It's easy.
Yeah, but if you register early, it was like $250, I think. So that, I mean, for this kind of 2.5 day training, that's cheap. That is very cheap.
You know, we've had some stuff donated. We'll have some giveaways and things like that. And there's some meals provided, and it's going to be a really, really good thing. We're hoping everything will be successful this year. We can push ahead, do it again next year, and we kind of did it. I don't want to say spur of the moment, but we were kind of under the gun as far as getting it this year and getting some of the speakers had already been committed to other things. So it was good to go ahead and get it going this year. Hopefully we can do it again.
Sometimes I think that pressure's good, you know, because if you say, hey, we're doing it in 26, and then everybody kind of sits down, and then next thing you know, you're under the gun again, you know. So
yeah, for sure.
So this last year was the first year at Cottonwood Park that y'all had, what's it called again?
Music on the Mississippi.
Music on the Mississippi.
Yeah, and of course I was a lot more involved with that last year because I was employed by the city.
Yeah.
But I know they're doing it again this year. They're going to have Jamie Johnson, and John D. Hale Band, and
that's amazing to me. I heard that. Somebody told me that, and I was like, you remember I called you. I'm like, is this right? You're getting Jamie Johnson here?
Yeah.
How is that? How did that happen?
You know, those are, of course, until I worked at the city when I was working at the city last year, and they went to put that on, I didn't realize how much went into those things. There's a whole there's a lot going on behind the scenes there to make those things happen.
Yeah, because you got to think about what might happen, or how many people are going to show up. What's weather going to be like? You know, and then you're trying to organize food trucks and bathrooms and porta potties. I mean, where are people going to park? I mean, all these things. We've got to keep progressing in our area, and Sykeston is doing some great things between the rodeo and. I know maybe the last year I think the Hot Air Balloon Festival has been a really good thing the past couple of years, and so there's just a lot of good things. It's almost like I was talking earlier. We don't want to be stagnant and push ahead, have some good things, and for the people there, they deserve our people. And I've said that before too, and I said that when I was at the city of New Madrid about police work, that our citizens here deserve just as good as everybody else has. They just like they deserve. Good professional service from our police department, and the same they deserve good public events that people put a lot of work into, and I think it's going to be good. So the crime and stuff that's going on, like say right now in New Madrid County, how is that going? I mean,
I think it's going really good. I think we're I'm not going to say
well, stuff's always happening everywhere.
It's never going to stop. But we're just being one thing I said too, and I know I'm a broken record, but so many things I said during the campaign that then I got to come in and deliver on, you know. And one of those is I think we go into these places that again now for probably a decade have been devoid, other than the sheriff's office, but devoid of any municipal police department. And we're, you know as well as I do, a good probably 5% of your population accounts for the vast majority of your crime.
Yeah.
So we're attacking that 5%. You know, we're trying to take the people off the street that are.
That's why the relationships are so important, because if you just, even when you have other departments come in and assist, it's not as good, I think, when it's your own officers, because they don't know the community, and it's easy. I mean, when you used to do street crimes and stuff like that, one of the things I said, I don't want us stopping grandma going to the grocery store. You know, I want us to stop the right people and, you know, mitigate the actual crime that's happening.
Yeah.
And have that focus, you know, I think that's important.
You hit it on the head. You've really got to direct your work. You're not, and I use the same line all the time about stopping the old ladies going to the grocery store. You know, we're not. Yeah. That's not what this is for, you know.
It eats away at your reputation and credibility.
You're not painting with such a broad brush. You're trying to be very specific about what you're trying to do. You're trying to target violent criminals, and that's where we want to put our work toward, is targeting violent criminals and people that are taking advantage of others in the community. That's where you got to push. That's where you've got to focus that work, not just go out there. And that's part of that. What I said earlier about. Myself and coming to that reasoning that, hey, I'm out here banging my head against the wall, and I'm working harder, but I'm not working smarter. Yeah. And you got to work smarter.
Yeah. And I just think about all the farmers and the farmland, and, you know, they got millions of dollars worth of equipment all over the county. And, of course, I know irrigations used to be getting hit by thieves and stuff. That was a big problem all over. And you're trying to cover that in the county and cover these, events and sometimes pop-up parties and, coordinate with all these various communities trying to get, it's a big job.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of juggling.
There's a high demand there, you know, so.
And if you don't come into a job, especially like the sheriff's job, and you come into it with that mindset that you get, I say all the time, you got a monster on your hands.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And you got it, that's pretty well 24 hours a day of racking your brain of how am I gonna make these pieces fit, and that's a big part of it, making the pieces fit.
So what do you like most about it?
What I like most about it is what I like most about being the police chief is that I'm able to take my ideas and put them in practice. But what I really like too is, and I said this is nothing against Sykeston, but the difference now, and even working at the city of New Madrid compared to when I was at Sykeston is, I would be here. And of course, your guys, they're having to do terrible things sometimes. They're having to go through situations that normal people don't understand. They're having to, and a lot of times they're helping people. They're doing good things. When I was here, I would help somebody. I would do something. All right, see you later. They don't know who I am. They have no concept of that. And I always said when I worked here, I was like, I really was hesitant to work where I'm from. But now it's completely different in that I get satisfaction from the person I know. They've got a serious problem, and I can help them with it. And in the end, then I get a lot more, they know who I am. They've known me for my whole life. And I take a lot of satisfaction from that they trust me to handle the problem, and I've had people say that before, that, hey, when you get there, I knew everything was going to be fine. You were going to know what to do. And I take a lot of satisfaction from that it's people that I've known my whole life that now I'm able to help them, and I found that a lot when I was at the city of New Madrid because, again, I grew up in Kewanee and I've got family all over the county and, hey, I've got a problem with this. I'm sorry, ain't much I can do for you. I mean, I can get you to the right person, but I'm the police chief of the city of New Madrid. And so I really enjoy that.
So you're going to run again, is what
I
you're
will
saying.
be running again.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. Well, Terry Stevens told me, he said, your next campaign starts the day after the election.
Right.
So the next day when the election's over, you start preparing for the next one. But, I think a lot of that is if you go in there and you throw as much into it as I am, and as many hours and as much work and as much effort and thought, it's going to take care of itself.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, you're going to go in there and do a good job, do the things you need to do. You're going to show the public that you've earned it, and I'm not concerned at all. If there's an opponent in 3.5 years, so be it, and we'll have the election and let the best man or woman win. But I'm not concerned because I'm just going to go in there and do the right thing. And it's really funny how doing the right thing really takes care of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I tell them that a lot too, is not only that you're doing the right thing, but you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And people can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a lot of information. I think, and we appreciate you coming up. I think
I appreciate you having me. I think I told you before, like, if you have Derek Wheatley on there before you have me, we're going to have a problem. So
we're still mad at Derek because he left us to go be the sheriff of Scott County.
Yeah.
But we're going to get him in here, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I just kind of like to see how things are going. I know we talk a lot, but I this program, we're trying to just get information out to the community about law enforcement and trying to, in firefighting and just community stuff, people that are serving the community and trying to make, this region better,
Well, it's a good thing, and I think I told you that last time when Brandon and I were here, and it was right when you were fixing to get started.
Yeah.
And I, on the same time, I was like, man, I told you that. I wish I'd thought of that first.
Well, it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? There's some people who really don't care about it. I mean, they're not really tuned in until something happens, and then it's like, why is this like? And then so. But we try to get the message out there, and I think people miss all these people who aren't police officers, but they're out there helping to make the communities better. They're just as important, sometimes maybe more important. So
it's hard to see sometimes. You living in so much negativity around, especially when you're a police officer, but you don't realize that a vast majority of population out there, they're on your side.
Yeah,
they are. And it's good to see that sometimes. And I think, even from this platform you've got, Brandon and I have talked some about maybe not a podcast, but just a video series of these are some of the things going on. I told somebody one of the best things I ever did at the City of New Madrid, we used to have a weekly newspaper there, the Weekly Record, and I started putting a little article in there every week, and got such good feedback from that, because we've all been guilty of, you see the police officer driving down the street, and he's just out here riding around. We don't know what they're doing, and the public doesn't know step for step. Now I get calls all the time. Hey, what's going on at such and such place? Or I saw there were deputies at this, but the general public really doesn't know, and it's not their fault. We need to put it out there.
Just what you said. I mean, you're dealing with the 5% that are actually committing the crimes. So the 95%, they're not really. I don't want to say they don't need law enforcement. They do, but they just don't interact with us.
Most people are going to go their whole life and without ever calling the police.
Yeah,
that's the way it works. Maybe once, maybe twice. Most people, regular citizens, they don't call the police, especially on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's not because they don't like them. It's just they don't have a need for that.
Right.
But there's a segment of the population out here that does have a need for it, whether it's elderly, whether it's there are a lot of but most people are they just don't have dealings like that with the police. Not that it's negative, it's just that they don't have the need. And the police are serving them. They're out there doing prevention. They're things that are eventually going to spill over onto people that aren't calling the police. But it's we need to get it out there to them. We can't expect them to know what we're doing if we're not putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, Mom and Dad, they're big fans of you. They're in New Madrid County. They voted for you.
That's what I like to hear. I told a lady yesterday, 2 days ago, so I voted for you. I said, they all say that now. But no.
Well, Mom was hounding you for that sign. She was like, I want that sign. Where's that sign at?
I already know, So, they are. I had it, and that's a perfect example, is I had a lot of great people behind me, more than I could ever count. And then that's part of this deal is people like that. There's nothing I would do I would do everything I can to keep from letting somebody like that down.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that. I'll fall out from exhaustion before I let somebody like that down, and I've got a lot of those people behind me, so I'm going to give them what they ask for.
I think you're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. Being from New Madrid County, I mean, we need a good, strong sheriff in the county doing what you're doing, and so I think that's good. Thanks for coming up here today. And again, it's another episode, Chief.Cap.Chap, and we miss Jason. But we want to say thanks to Josh for doing all the editing that he does for us. He does a great job. And please email us and tell us what ideas for shows that you like to see. We got an email from somebody with some ideas of shows which I thought was pretty good.
Dr. Shadwick?
Yeah, Dr. Shadwick. So I always like to hear that. It lets me know that people are listening and they appreciate it. So he threw out some pretty good ideas for shows I think we can do. So I think that's going to be good. But that's Chief.Cap.Chap at gmail.com. Email us, and we'll see you next time. But first, what does Tigger say?
Something about a high road.
He says, take the high road. That's our mascot right there, Tigger. I know you've been sitting there like, what the heck y'all got Tigger?
I did, but when you use my high road, my high road comment I just gave you here recently.
That's right.
Sometimes I know we're at the end here, but I like to call them vents sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I call, and I think I told Jim, I said, my high road is so wore out, it's got wagon ruts in it knee deep, where I'm just, I don't know if I can be there anymore, but it's good.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard taking the high road sometimes. It really is, but that's what you need to do.
Ticker's kind of our cliffhanger. Maybe the last episode before we all retire, we'll tell you the Ticker story. So.
Yeah. Okay. It's a pretty good story, yeah. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.